Hey, Peter Jane. Good to hang out with you today.
Thanks, Peter.
So
You can
welcome
call me
along.
PJ, actually. PJ.
PJ, I like that. I
Yeah.
like that. Well, PJ, look, it's good to have you along. The whole purpose of today's call is like we've been aware of each other, but we've never actually sat down and had a good chat about your business and what's going on for you sales wise and what it could look like to, get in under the hood and solve some of the sales challenges that you might be having in your business. So just having this conversation, everything's welcome. Share whatever feels comfortable for you, and let's just have a bit of a
Yeah.
chat and see if I can help you move the dial on sales for you in your business. So I guess just before we talk about, I know you had a sales challenge in mind. Was there um, any context that I should be aware of, or anybody who's listening, should be aware of about you and your business that might help them get some value out of what it is that we talk about today?
Yeah. My business is we do executive search and recruiting specifically into the aged care sector. So it's very niche what we do. Had the business for 15 years, and I can honestly say I was probably the second or third recruiter to establish a business in that niche. Um, and for 15 years, we've sold our service on an exclusive and retained basis.
Hmm.
So, for example, when people want to sell their house, in the olden days, they used to multi-list it with multiple real estate agents. And now we all just go with the one person. We work with them exclusively, typically on a retained basis. They pay for advertising up front. So that's exactly the same as how we work, which is different to probably 90% of other recruitment agencies, certainly in the aged care sphere. So to sell that to new clients, I mean, we've been doing it for so long. So we most of the time win with new clients versus sometimes clients say to us, well, no, we don't want to go exclusive with you. We want to put it out to 3 or 4 different recruitment agencies. Thank you very much. And then, we just say, well, look, we can't actually work with you because that kind of dilutes my brand. Um, so we don't really have a problem in terms of selling our retained and exclusive business model and services. But what I have toyed with is two things in the last kind of 6 months, and it's part of my business strategic plan. And the first one is potentially selling a higher recruitment fee for, this sounds really like, it doesn't mean to sound egotistical or anything, but for me as the director to do the work on the assignment, on the recruitment assignment, versus one of my team members. So it's a little bit like that model. Women, you guys wouldn't experience this, but when you go to the hairdresser, and some very boutique hairdressers who have a pretty fine brand and reputation, which
Mm,
my business does in the
mhm,
aged care recruitment game.
mm,
If you want Joe Blogs to do your hair, this is the premium price that you pay for Joe. But if you want a more junior person to do your hair, you're not going to have to pay as much. So
mhm.
it's that differentiator in
Yeah, yeah, you're
terms of
borrowing that type of
who
model. That makes
delivers.
sense.
Yeah. So that's something that I'm really, really keen to potentially explore. Probably the most important thing. And the second thing is actually raising our fees. How do we sell that to clients, A, who we've never worked with before, and B, clients that we've already worked with, and this is our fee now, but actually we're putting it up. And it's kind of not really the done thing, this kind of graded model in recruitment, because with CPI, we base our fee based on remuneration,
Hmm.
salary.
Hmm. Hmm.
And CPI, salaries are going up 4 or 5% each year, and
Mm.
therefore our revenue goes up as well. So we haven't put our fees up per se. So toying with the idea of doing that also.
Mm. And
How do we
what?
sell that?
Yeah. Okay. So let's really boil this down and make it succinct. What's your biggest challenges you're figuring out? Like, are you decided on this and you're like, how do we go about executing successfully? Are you more like, I want a lens on whether this is actually palatable? Like, what's the challenge in and amongst this new strategy that you're thinking through?
Okay, so the challenge is I actually want the delineation model to get legs. So the challenge is, how do I sell that to
Mm,
new and to existing clients? That, well, if you want me to be your front man,
mhm,
to do the headhunt, to
mhm.
find you the best talent in Australia, you're going to have to pay premium for that.
Yeah, yeah.
Versus, what's the difference between getting one of my team to do exactly the same function?
Mm, it's an interesting
Is that
call
too
out.
hard?
No, 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 no. I think it's very interesting. And I think it's a justifiable approach, right? You've obviously got to experiment to see how you position that, but like just shooting from the hip here, gut feeling is there might be certain types of recruitments that just make sense for your team to do, right? Like that they
Yeah.
shouldn't pay extra for, that they should take the cheaper
Yes.
option, right? Because they're going to get
Yeah.
what it is that they need, right? But I'd be getting
Yeah.
really clear on what are the types of recruiting offerings that are worth them spending a bit more on. You know, maybe a
Mm.
role that they've filled twice and it hasn't worked out, right? Or it's a particular
Yeah.
type of level of executive, or like what's the circumstance or scenario where it's like, because if you think about it, right, there's plenty of times when we can get the cheap thing and it solves our problem, right? And it's like, that's great, job done. Why would we spend more on it? But
Yeah.
there's other times where this is extra business critical, or great, I've been working with, one of your team and they've done a great job, but we're now hiring in a CEO, or we're hiring it, like we need that
Yeah.
extra level of something that it is that you and only you can provide, or you go the extra mile for, or like that risk mitigation of it not working
Yeah.
out is extra important. Like let's start putting language
What's
and
the
positioning
USP?
around that value uplift, right?
Mm.
And be
Mm.
clear on what it's not, right? Like if you're hiring for this type of role, use my team. They're excellent. They're amazing. Like they'll kick it out of the park for you. But if you come up against these types of situations or roles or things, that's where it might be worth investing a little bit more. And you will get some people who just they want the owner, right? And they're like, you know what, I'm willing to
Yeah.
pay more for that, right? Like some people are
Yeah.
I'm the guy who invests in the premium thing, or I'm the woman who invests in the premium. That's my mindset. I just go for the best, and that's how I approach it, right? Whereas other people are looking for the value option and will always go the cheapest, and others will be like, well, depending on the business circumstance and the
Mm.
situation, actually, yep, now we'll spend more, now we'll spend less, because of the
Mm.
relative potential upside or risk to the business. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you know, I've only tried to sell it to a new client once,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like you said, it was a specialist. It was a pain point for the organization because they had used three different recruiters, been trying to recruit to this position for 6 months, and it was in very regional Victoria.
Mm,
And I tried to sell it. So I met with them on Zoom, and the HR director just said, "Well, what are we going to get that's different if we engage you versus one of your team?" And I actually couldn't answer. I couldn't answer her. I couldn't tell her what the differentiator was.
mm,
I couldn't just sit there and go, "Well, I'm the hard hitter, and it's guaranteed you're going to best." Like, do you know?
mm,
Versus, and the recruitment consultant that I had at the time was brand new. She'd never recruited before.
mm.
So, but I wasn't going to say that. You can't sell that to somebody,
Yeah,
Oh, I'll give you the most junior person in my team.
yeah, yeah. But you're creating tiers, right? And this happened in one of my other clients, right? Where he kind of had his price point and his team's price point. And I know this is kind of already the direction that we're talking about, right? But almost creating different tiers, right? It's like if you're hiring
Yeah.
for a junior role, you only need someone that's, like knows our formula and our process
Yeah.
and has my support, right?
Yes.
Don't go and pay the premium fees. Like I like don't recommend it to them, right? Recommend, and if you
Yes.
start getting like okay, cool. So for this type of role, for this type of risk appetite, for this type of whatever, like this is the percentage that we take, right? And these two people in my team, you know, get paid this and they're at that level, right? And then you've got the senior person in your team, right? And so they're I don't know, 2% extra or whatever it might be, right?
Yeah.
And with
Yeah.
them, you get a minimum 5 years of experience and a deep specialization in these industries and whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And for myself, I've been doing this for 15 years, and so you get 15 years of experience, and you know, these are the types of scenarios where it might be worth paying that extra sort of percentage for my services, right? And so
20
that way,
years. 20 years.
right, right, exactly, right.
Yeah.
And so it's like you are
Amazing.
like your process for finding people is going to do the job, right? But the way that you execute that process, inevitably the experience and the specialization, all of that is going to add more value, right? And so they should be paying for that value, if that's provided, and not paying for it if they don't need it, right? And then it's really justifiable, and you've kind of got this nice one of the things that's really important with sales is clarity, right? Like when you're trying to sell something without clarity, everything just becomes a little bit harder to kind of work
Yes.
out. But if it's
Yeah.
like the picture I'm starting to get painted in my head here that you might want to experiment with, and these numbers are completely arbitrary, definitely use your own, you
Yeah.
don't need to
Go.
share that on this
Pull
call,
them
right?
out.
But
Yeah.
maybe it's you know, 14% for your junior recruiters, 16% for your senior recruiters, and
Yeah.
19% for, you know, the director, right? And
Yeah.
you know, these are the things you get at each of the tiers. And I know you've got a fractional chief marketing officer, and so she can do up some collateral that comes with that. That can be a page on your website. Now, this is all where it can go, assuming the strategy works. Before you go and like
Mm,
build this
mm.
strategy out, I'd really encourage you
Yeah.
to
You got
test
to
it
test
verbally,
it.
right? So let's
Yeah.
like have a little bit of a project plan for yourself for a period of time or a number of conversations before you validate it, right? So I'd say if you can sell yourself at a higher rate 3 to 5 times, that's validated, right? 1 to 2, it's like, yep, we're heading in the right direction. But 3 to 5
Yeah.
is like, we're kind of proving this model out. It's kind of working. We've validated it. Okay, now let's put some marketing collateral behind it. Let's start, you know, and you can, it's almost like it also builds a training ground for your business, right? It's like, cool.
Yeah.
And if, you know, you come on junior and this is the level that you're at, and you know, and this is where you can aspire to. And when you're bringing in more revenue, if you're wanting, like there's lots of business benefits for you as a business owner, which I know today's all about your sales challenge. But I think if you can map this out well and run an experiment and prove out the model, I think it could really, you know, make sense for where you're thinking about
Yeah.
going.
Yeah. Yep. Good.
How does that feel?
Yeah. I'm sitting here thinking, I often get asked to pitch for the recruitment of CEOs. I typically do the CEO roles, and we're competing with 2 or 3 other aged care recruitment consultancies. And I would say 8 times out of 10, the boards that are recruiting their CEO choose the person who is the most reasonably priced in terms of fee.
Mm-hmm.
So if I was to go in there, I think, look, and I don't know. I kind of have an idea what my competitors are charging. Yeah, it's that balance between brand and how much of that can you sell versus what people are prepared to pay, you know? And is your brand really strong enough for you to be able to bump up your fee relative to other brands that I'm competing with? You know,
100%.
or
Yeah.
that will they go with the less recognized person and brand for the cheaper fee?
Mm, mm. And it's a risk, right? Like when you're growing your business and you're trying a new sales strategy, it is a risk, right? And so you want to do that in a measured way, right? We're going to run this for an experiment for 5 or 10 times or whatever, and see what happens. And if we're losing deals that are core to our business, and we can't afford to lose, and we're losing it because of this strategy, well,
Yeah,
we need to pull
we've got to
back. And
stop.
right, and
Yeah.
it's
So
like,
that's the thing. That's the risk.
yeah, exactly, right.
And I,
And
and
but
I and I guess, yeah. And that talks to the second part of,
mm,
the challenge in terms of sales is, putting fees up,
mhm,
because again, it's that price point thing.
but
It's like
if you're
when you go
not,
to
if
DJs, do you buy Sheridan
yeah,
towels or do you buy View
yeah,
towels?
yeah, yeah. No, for sure.
Everybody's got different price points.
Totally.
Yeah, in
But the
terms of
only
brand
way,
and
the one thing I would say about price points, right? And this is almost like in a little bit of a different direction, but if you've never lost a deal because of price, you've never found out where your limit is. Right? Like that's a bit of a theory I like to work with. It's a challenging one because you don't want to lose anything, right? But if you're going to start, you know, like putting you don't know how high your prices could go until you've like had that as a genuine objection. So often people give you objections around price, but if if you're experienced enough, you can kind of see that that's just them trying to negotiate. Where's the point where you actually lose deals? And so like I went through this in my sales consultancy as well, right? Like I'd put my prices up many times and then I found a point where it's like, yeah, people will genuinely not work with me here. Now I still lose deals because of price every now and then. But I've decided that like I found a point where I only lose a few deals because of price, but I'm getting paid enough and I also have enough volume of work that works for me, and I found a sustainable model, right? But I've had to try that, right? And then I went to a point and found it, you know. And so
that's your sweet spot.
Right. But until you've done that, you don't know where that point is, right? And the reality is, you know, you could custom price everything for every deal, right? But that doesn't allow for a scalable model. It allows, you know, you're spending a lot of cycles on thinking and time, and it sounds like in your business you like a structured, clear model with clear value drivers at each point feels like a reasonable hypothesis, right? And so going and trying it out, it's really the only way you're going to know.
Yeah. Agree. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So how do you feel? Do you feel like it's worth a test? Do you feel like it's something that you want to give a go?
Yeah, I do. I do. It is absolutely something I want to give a go. I guess you know, unfortunately with pitching for those sorts of executive positions as a recruiter, you're only as good as the information, as in the documentation that you provide to the board in order for them to make their selection as to who's going to recruit their CEO. So once I hit the send button on my email, I don't actually get to sit in the same room as the board who are making their choice as to which recruitment company is going to recruit their CEO. So, you know, on paper, they're going to see, okay, this recruiter is 20%. On paper, this recruiter is 17%. You know, I haven't been able to get in front of these people. They may not necessarily, you know, so there are, like, it's very different in the world of exec recruitment in that sense. I would say probably 1 out of 10 times that we're asked to pitch, the board will actually invite me to go and meet with them at a board meeting before they decide who they're going to choose. So it's, you know, it's a bit tricky.
Totally. And so maybe the model doesn't work for your industry. You don't know, right? Until you've tested it, you don't know. If you've got 10 times where you've done it with your current model, and then you do another 10 times with the new model and compare your close rates, and then you've got a data point. Right now you don't have the data point, and there's lots of other things that you can do. If you double down and said, I will put my prices up, and if I lose deals, that's okay, but I need to maximize that, then there's different strategies you could put in place around that. As far as, well, we won't put in
risk.
Exactly. We won't put in for any deals where I don't get to talk to someone, right? And so you can develop a sales strategy around it. But for right now, it feels like you almost need that little push to just give it a crack for a few.
Have a go.
Make sure you capture data around it so that you see, don't change anything else apart from the price point, do the same pitch, that type of thing, right? And look, if we need to have a broader discussion, we can dive into more depth, over time as you run that as a process. But hopefully that gives you something to kind of take away from this conversation and start.
It does. Thank you. Yeah, and I think it's good for me to get some real objectivity, you know, rather than speaking with people who are kind of in and around my specific industry. Yeah, it's really good. Thank you. It's different perspective.
Awesome. Very cool. Oh, well, look, I'm excited for you. And thanks for being on the session today.
Thanks for your time.
No worries at all.
Have a good weekend.
You too.